Hello, and welcome to the Minnesota Cannabis College Minnesota Cannabis License Overview, an August 2023 training. Today we're going to be exploring the application process, the license types, and what we know so far about each of those. While there's still a lot that we don't know, House File 100 did dictate a lot that will decide our future cannabis market, and we wanted to walk through those different license types and then what we know about the application process so far. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So, first, a little bit about the Minnesota Cannabis College. The mission of the Minnesota Cannabis College is to educate and support individuals seeking careers or entrepreneurial opportunities in the state's cannabis industry, with an emphasis on individuals facing barriers to traditional education, entrepreneurial, or employment paths, while supporting a diverse, equitable, and inclusive cannabis industry throughout the state of Minnesota. Since the passage of House File 100, it's been really exciting to be able to help support our mission and support future entrepreneurs and employees throughout the state of Minnesota. Before we jump in, I do want to note that the information provided in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice, but instead, all information, content, and materials are available for general information purposes only. Information in this presentation may not constitute the most up to date legal advice or other information. No individual should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information in this presentation without first seeking legal advice from the participant's own legal counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. As anyone who's worked in Minnesota's cannabis industry has known, the laws change quite often. So be sure to check out cannabis.mn.gov to learn the most up to date information about cannabis laws. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. So here's a little bit about what we know about the application process so far. We know that the application process will be done on a rolling basis, but that application period will open early part of 2025. Those applications are then going to be scored by the Office of Cannabis Management and ranked. The higher up of your score, the more likely you are to receive a license. We're going to go over what gets scored in just a couple minutes. We then know that during that first quarter of 2021, those applications that get scored highly and are issued licenses will be issued those licenses at those time and will be able to begin operations. So we expect stores to open in Minnesota quarter one of 2025. All right, all that being said, let's go ahead and explore what we know about the application so far. So far, we know that the application for cannabis licenses is going to be ranked on 8 different points. It's possible that the Office of Cannabis Management can add additional points on later on, and the law specifically noted 2 areas that the office should focus on, but these are the ones that we know so far. Let's go ahead and review them. The first one, and the largest, is going to be the status of a social equity applicant. We're going to go over the definition of a social equity applicant on the next slide, but note that if you are a social equity applicant, your application will be ranked potentially 20% higher than non social equity applicants. The law does dictate that at least 20% of points from the application process do need to come from the social equity applicant status. So if you are a social equity applicant, you do have a significant jump on other businesses. Do note, though, that this is ranked on equity. So if only one of your owners has a social equity status, your business does not get 100% of those points. If they own 50% of the business, they would then get 50% of the points from what we know so far from the bill. Other things that your application will be scored on is the applicant's status as a veteran or retired National Guard applicant. They'll be noting your security and record keeping plan. They'll be looking at your employee training plan. They'll be looking at your business plan and overall financial situation. They'll be evaluating your labor and employment practices. They'll be looking for the knowledge and experience of the directors and owners of the business. And finally, they'll be looking for an environmental plan. We can see examples from other states on what each of these would look like, but do know that we don't know the specifics of what the office will be looking for until that director and rule process is underway. So this is what we know so far is that the application will include at least these 8 points. But the office is allowed to add other points to the application if they so choose to. Two that the legislature specifically noted that the office can focus on is one, an expansion of service to an underrepresented market, and two, the impact of cannabis prohibition on the applicant specifically, such as arrest or imprisonment of the application or a member of the applicant's immediate family. and that is separate from the status of a social equity applicant. So if you have been previously impacted by the war on drugs, your application could potentially be ranked even higher than 20% above other applicants. So definitely, we would consider you looking at becoming an entrepreneur in the industry. There's still a lot that we don't know about the application. These 8 points don't really tell us exactly what that application will include, and we have to wait for that rulemaking process to be completed before we'll know specifically. But these are the things that business owners can be looking at today to start evaluating. Can I be developing labor practice agreements? Can I be coming up with an employee training plan, perhaps in consultation with the Minnesota Cannabis College? And can I be developing my business plan today? So that way, when the application comes out, I'm not just beginning that process. Instead, I and my team are all ready to go. That's what we know about the application today. There's still a lot that we don't know, and we hope to learn more from the office as that rulemaking process continues on. But as of today, note that these 8 points will be scored on your application. Now let's jump into the definition of a social equity applicant. One of the most exciting parts about House File 100 is that the definition of a social equity applicant is pretty large in comparison to some other states. Let's explore who's a social equity applicant in the state of Minnesota under House File 100. The first person, or first group of people who will be eligible as social equity applicants is those that have a prior cannabis conviction, or those that have a parent, guardian, child, spouse, or dependent who is convicted of a cannabis related offense in Minnesota prior to the enactment of House File 100. Similarly, if you were the dependent of someone convicted of a cannabis related offense, you too are eligible as a social equity applicant. Minnesota looked at the war on drugs and said that it was something wrong, and we were looking to right that wrong. And using the definition of a social equity applicant to include all people previously convicted of cannabis related offenses is one of the ways they tried to open that up. But that's not the only definition. There are others that qualify as social equity applicants as well. The next group we want to explore is service disabled veterans, current or former members of the National Guard, or any veteran or member of the National Guard who has lost honorable status due to cannabis related offenses. Again, looking at the harms of the war on drugs, saying it was wrong, trying to include them as social equity applicants. The next group of people include residents of the last 5 years of any of the following: one or more sub areas that have experienced a disproportionately large amount of enforcement, a census tract where the poverty rate was 20% or more, or a census tract where the median family income did not exceed 80% of the statewide median family income. The state of Minnesota is going to do a study and plans to publish the report January of 2024, including what areas fall under this definition. So if you're wondering if you qualify, be sure to look out for that study. That could tell you more about if you yourself are a social equity applicant. And then finally, any individual that is an emerging farmer will also qualify as a social equity applicant. So, looking at the type of business licenses that are going to be created by House File 100, we can look and see what different types those licenses are able to do. We're going to break this chart down more specifically when we look at each individual license type, but this is an overview of some of the things the licenses allow different businesses to do. Some businesses are allowed to do retail sales, wholesales, or cultivate, processing and extraction, transporting to businesses or delivering to customers, allowing on site consumption, and many more. So let's go ahead and jump in. We also want to look at the license fees. You can see that Minnesota, compared to other states, have relatively low license fees for allowing people to become part of the cannabis industry. The lowest cost adult use business is that microbusiness license at only $500 to open your business doors. Obviously, that's just from the regulatory side, not from getting your business started side. When we also look at what that most expensive license type, it's going to be that large cultivator license and also that combination medical adult use license. And that's going to be a $30,000 total just to begin operating your business from the regulatory side. Also, an exciting thing that was written into the license structure is that all medical applications have a $250 application fee. They then have a $0 initial licensure fee and a $0 renewal fee. The goal is to try to create as many medical businesses as possible to support the medical patients throughout Minnesota. And using the application fee is one way that they did that. We also want to note that even though we're going to be talking about the license to grow industrial hemp throughout this video, it is not overseen by the Office of Cannabis Management and is not included in the cannabis business license structure that was created by House File 100. We can also look at who's allowed to own multiple different license types in Minnesota. Minnesota created license type to avoid vertical integration, to make sure that businesses are either on that micro side or, if they're large businesses, focus on specific parts of the industry, such as wholesaling, retailing, etc. We're, again, going to break this down a little bit more specifically throughout the video, but this provides you a little bit of an overview of what different license types you'd be able to hold. So, for example, if you're a meso business, you are also allowed to hold an event license and a medical retailer license, but you're not allowed to hold any additional cannabis licenses. Again, this does not include that license to grow industrial hemp aside from the businesses that are noted specifically compared to that growing industrial hemp. So, hemp retailers, hemp manufacturers, and also cultivators can also have licenses to grow industrial hemp, even though they are not overseen by the Office of Cannabis Management. There are also two business types that are not allowed to hold any other licenses in Minnesota's cannabis market. The first one is testing. If you're a testing lab, you're not allowed to operate or own any other cannabis business. The other is that combination business license, that medical and adult use combination license allows you to participate in both markets. So they limit you to only that one license. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into each specific license type, explore what we know about them today, and talk about who they'd be ideal for. The first business type that we think is the most exciting here in Minnesota that we want to explore is the microbusiness license. The microbusiness license allows holders to grow cannabis, make cannabis concentrates, manufacture cannabis products, purchase cannabis and hemp materials from other businesses, package and label products for sales, and operate on site consumption retail lounges. This is sort of your overall can do everything type of license. However, you are limited on how large your business is able to grow. If you are cultivating and you get a cultivation endorsement, you are capped at growing no more than 5,000 square feet of indoor cannabis or no more than half an acre of outdoor cannabis. We believe at this time that that is an and, that you can do both, but the bill does not state specifically. So we're waiting for the rulemaking process to commence so we know that. Retail locations, you're capped at having only one customer retail facing location. So if you hope to operate multiple stores throughout Minnesota, the microbusiness license type will not be for you. On site consumption will be allowed with an endorsement under the microbusiness, which is particularly exciting. It's one of the few license types that is allowed to have on site consumption lounges. You've also heard me mention endorsements a couple times. Micro and meso business license operate under an endorsement structure, meaning that you get the license, which allows you to operate your business, and then you get specific endorsements, allowing your business to do specific things, such as cultivating, extracting, processing of consumer production goods, on site consumption, and retail. If you hope to just cultivate and want to have a craft cultivation side, growing no more than 5,000 square feet, but you don't want to do any other part of the industry, that would be allowed under the micro business type. You could be a micro business cultivator for an application fee of only $500. You are capped on how much you can grow, but it is a great way for new people to enter the industry. We're really excited about the micro business license because it really lowers the barrier for people to become part of the industry. Our mission is to help people who are traditionally barred from employment and entrepreneurial opportunities become part of cannabis industry here in Minnesota. And the micro business license is going to be the best to allow some of those new entrepreneurs become part of cannabis industry here in Minnesota. So we're particularly excited about that one. Let's move on and talk about the meso business license. The meso business license is very, very similar to micro business, except that it allows you to do more business. Instead of micro, you are meso, meaning medium. You're allowed to cultivate 15,000 instead of 5,000 square feet, and you're allowed to cultivate an acre of outdoors. Also, instead of only operating one retail store, you're allowed to operate three customer facing retail locations. Again, you sort of get three times as large of a business, both on that cultivation side and on the retail side. What's also exciting about the Meso business license is it allows the holders to also hold a medical retailer location license. So a meso business is allowed to have a medical endorsement, is allowed to produce medical products, and is allowed to sell into that medical market if they have that medical retailer license. This allows you to do a lot beyond just what that micro business license can do. It does have a slightly higher fee. You're looking at a $5,000 application fee and a $5,000 initial license fee, so a total startup cost of $10,000 from that regulatory side. The Meso business license is particularly interesting, and if you have a cannabis business already started, or if you're looking to start a cannabis business that can grow more than 5,000 square feet or have more than one retail store, the Meso business license could be great for you. If you, however, want to just focus on the retailer side, you can get the retailer license. The retailer license allows the holder to purchase cannabis plants, flower, product, and hemp derived items from various cannabis businesses. And you're allowed to sell those immature plants, clones, adult use cannabis flower, products, and hemp derived items to consumers. You're not allowed to produce your own products, and you're not allowed to cultivate your own products. You are instead buying from businesses and selling to consumers. You are limited that you're only allowed to have one business per city and only three per county. However, you can have up to five total retail locations in total with that retailer license. You also are allowed to have other license types as well. You could have a delivery license, allowing you to deliver products to people's individual doors. You could have a medical retailer license, allowing you to sell not just adult use cannabis, but medical cannabis as well. And of course, you can have that event organizer license, allowing you to organize events and selling cannabis outside of your physical retail store for a limited amount of time. An interesting thing to note is that municipalities and counties are allowed to open retail fronts. So we could see municipal cannabis shops open throughout Minnesota. This is something pretty interesting written into our bill, and we're excited to see different cities and counties explore the option of opening retail stores. The regulatory fees are pretty low in terms of opening a retail store. You'd be looking at a $2,500 application fee and a $2,500 initial license fee. That would allow you to open up to five retail stores throughout the state of Minnesota. We still don't know exactly some of the limitations on what those stores will look like, on how large they have to be. More is to come during that rulemaking process. But here's what we do know today about opening a retail shop. One of the license types that we mentioned during the retailer is that delivery service license. Let's explore that a bit now. The delivery service license allows permit holders to purchase cannabis products and hemp edibles from licensed meso and micro businesses, along with cannabis retailers, and to transport and deliver those products to consumers. This is on that adult use side. Cannabis products must be transported in a locked and secured compartment in the vehicle that is not accessible to the driver during transport. They also the office plans to set transportation limits on how much cannabis is allowed to be transported by a delivery service at one time. That has not yet been set and will be determined during the rulemaking process. Those with a delivery service license are also allowed to hold other license types as well. For example, if you hold a delivery service license, you'd also be allowed to hold a retailer license, a wholesaler license, a transporter license, a medical retailer license, or an event organizer license. One thing to note is that that delivery service does have to be an unmarked vehicle. So we're not going to see vehicles that are clearly marked as cannabis delivery trucks driving throughout the state of Minnesota. They cannot have any images or text indicating that the vehicle is transporting cannabis. The regulatory fee for this is relatively low. You'd be looking at a $250 application fee and a $500 initial license fee. There's absolutely still a lot that we don't know about the delivery service rules that are going to be determined during that rulemaking process. But this is what we do know about that application today. For $750, and if you have an unmarked vehicle with a separate storage section, you would be allowed to apply for a license to deliver adult use cannabis throughout the state of Minnesota. The last license type that we wanted to explore that would be allowed to do consumer retail sales is that adult and medical combination license. This was a license type that was added later on during the bill making process, and it was mostly added to accommodate two of our existing medical businesses here in the state of Minnesota. There are certain caveats written into the bill that would grandfather in certain rights that those businesses currently have into our new adult use market. So the regulatory fee for this does seem particularly high, and the reason is that it's for existing businesses operating in the state of Minnesota. Can others apply for this license? Absolutely. But do note that it's mostly geared towards those two operating medical businesses. With that being said, let's jump in. This business type will allow the holders to grow cannabis, make cannabis and hemp concentrates, to purchase cannabis and hemp from licensed businesses, to package and label medical and adult use cannabis, and to sell to adults, patients, and other businesses. It's a pretty well rounded, do all sort of license that would allow a business to operate in both that adult use and medical side of the industry. You are limited, however, on how much you can grow. The limit currently is set at 60,000 square feet on the medical side, and then you are allowed to have 50% of your grow dedicated to, excuse me, you're allowed to have 50% of what is dedicated to medical dedicated to adult use. So if you have 60,000 square feet of medical grow, you'd be allowed to have 30,000 square feet of adult use grow. You are also allowed to operate one retail location per congressional district. Multiple licenses are banned, however, so if you have an adult or medical combination license, you are limited to only that one license. And the office may revoke this license if they determine that a business is failing to adequately participate in the medical market. So if a business with an adult medical combination license is focusing almost exclusively on that adult use market, the office can decide to shut them down and to revoke their license. Those are the license types that are allowed to sell directly to consumers. However, there are many other important licenses that were created that will operate Minnesota's cannabis industry. Let's explore each of those a bit now. The first one that we want to touch on is the cultivator license. While the cultivator license does not allow you to sell directly to consumers, it is a very important part of the industry. We need cannabis grown to be able to have cannabis sold. Let's explore what you can do with a cultivator license. A cultivator will be able to grow cannabis, package and label immature plants and flower for sale to other cannabis businesses, and they will be allowed to transport cannabis to on site manufacturers of products. That means if cultivators need to transport their product that's grown to another location, they do need to partner with a cannabis transporter. They are limited in how much they're able to grow. They are currently capped at growing 30,000 square feet of indoor canopy and 2 acres of outdoor canopy. Again, we believe this will be an and, but the current bill does not know. So we're waiting for that rulemaking process to determine. Some more information about what's included on the license application beyond just what was noted earlier is that this license application specifically must include a plan for water and a plan for electricity in reference to the cultivation facility. So do note that if you plan to get a cultivator's license, you do need to have a plan in place for each of those. Also, if you have a cultivator license, you are allowed to hold other cannabis licenses. For example, you could hold a manufacturer license, a medical cultivator or producer license, an event license, or a license to grow industrial hemp. And similar to other cannabis businesses, cultivators might have size limitations placed upon them by the Office of Cannabis Management beyond just those limitations noted above. So be aware about that cultivator license. There's still a lot more to come that we don't know. But what we do know today is that you'd be allowed to cultivate 30,000 square feet of indoor canopy and likely 2 acres of outdoor. The next license type we want to explore is that manufacturer license. The manufacturer license allows holders to purchase cannabis flower, hemp material, and artificially derived cannabinoids to make cannabis and hemp products, package and label products for sale, and to sell concentrates and other products to other cannabis businesses. Size limitations will be set on this, but they have not yet been determined by statute. So more to come from the Office of Cannabis Management during that rulemaking process. Manufacturers are also allowed to accept unlicensed cannabis. So they are allowed to accept cannabis from unlicensed persons of up to 2 ounces or less on a single occasion. Again, this cannot be sold to the business because individuals without a license cannot sell cannabis, but they can accept cannabis to be entered into that stream of commerce. If you have a manufacturer license, you'd also be allowed to hold a cultivator license, a medical cultivator license, a medical producer license, or an event organizer license. And more about what's specifically noted on this application is that the Office of Cannabis Management will want to know more about your plans for ventilation, filtration, and also general utility use. So if you plan to acquire a manufacturer license, please be coming up for a plan for those three things so you're ready for that application process. All right, let's look at the wholesaler license. The wholesaler license is an important license type to help the cannabis function operate well here in Minnesota. Okay, let's also look at the wholesaler license. The wholesaler license is an important license type to allow the cannabis industry to operate well here in the state of Minnesota. The wholesaler license allows holders to purchase cannabis plants, flower, and products, and hemp materials from a variety of cannabis businesses. They are then allowed to sell these to other cannabis businesses, and they're allowed to import hemp derived consumer products from other states. They're not allowed to sell directly to consumers, but instead are business to business only, meaning they're selling their products to retailers, micro businesses, and many other type of business types. This is also the only business that is allowed to import products from other states. So they can import federally legal hemp derived edibles and concentrates for usage in production by those with a manufacturer or other license type. If you have a wholesaler license, you'd also be allowed to have a transporter license, a delivery service license, and an event organizer license. That delivery license would be particularly important as a wholesaler as you're having to deliver your product to other businesses throughout the state, something you can only do with that delivery service license. And then finally, one other thing that already is noted that will be required on this application is it will be required to include policies to prevent sale to unlicensed businesses. So there has to be some procedure in place to ensure that products are only being sold to businesses with a Minnesota issued cannabis business license. So something to note is if you're going to be applying for this business, be thinking about those policies today. Another license type that we talked about was that transporter license. The transporter license allows holders to transport cannabis plants, flower, products, and hemp material between various cannabis businesses, including all retail, cultivation, manufacturers, wholesalers, and cannabis testing facilities. Transporters, like many other business types, will be a really important part of Minnesota's cannabis industry. They will help the cannabis actually get to the stores, get to the testing labs, and get to the production facilities where it's made, sold, and tested. It's an important license type and will be critical to Minnesota's cannabis industry. One thing to note is if you are a cannabis transporter, you are required to have two employees in your transport vehicle at all times when it's transporting cannabis. This is not required of the delivery service, which is delivering to consumers, but is required of the transporter, which is delivering business to business. This is also a service provider only type of license. You're not selling to individual businesses and you're not growing or producing any products. Similar to the wholesale license type, you are supporting existing cannabis businesses and allowing cannabis to freely flow throughout that industrial side of the market. Similar to the delivery service side, you are also required to have an unmarked vehicle. So we won't see delivery trucks clearly marked with images or text noting that they're delivering cannabis driving throughout the state. The last adult use license type that we want to explore is that event organizer license. The event organizer license is a particularly interesting license is that it does not allow an individual to sell adult use cannabis to individuals. Instead, what it allows an individual to do is to plan an event and work with licensed cannabis businesses to allow for events where cannabis is sold. So they can plan events that last up to 4 days, and licensed micro, meso, and retailers will be allowed to sell cannabis plants, products, and hemp edibles at these events. On site consumption is allowed if the local government approves it. So we're going to see cannabis events throughout the state of Minnesota with consumption potentially being allowed at the event itself. There will be no unlicensed sales allowed at the event, so it has to be licensed business vendors that are selling the cannabis. Getting an event organizer license alone does not allow you to sell cannabis. It just allows you to host an event where licensed businesses are able to sell cannabis outside of their approved retail stores. Transportation is required to these events, so we're going to see that delivery service particularly important for any event being held in Minnesota. As we noted, on site consumption is allowed with the correct endorsement and with the approval of local government. And finally, the event organizer license type can be held by virtually any other cannabis business aside from those with a testing license or those with a hemp manufacturer or retail license. We're going to see a lot of cannabis events throughout Minnesota, hopefully, and this license type will allow people to do that. It's a $750 application fee and a $750 license fee. So for a $1,500 total startup fee, you'd be able to host an event for up to 4 days. Something pretty exciting, something we hope to see here in Minnesota. That concludes the adult use side of the market. Let's talk now about the medical side of the market before moving on to hemp edibles and then talking about testing. As we noted earlier in the video, Minnesota wanted to lower the bar to allow more businesses to become part of Minnesota's medical cannabis industry. Medical cultivator license type is just one way in which they did that. For an initial startup fee of $250, because there's no license fee and no renewal fee, you can start a cannabis business that sells or that cultivates medical cannabis here in Minnesota. This allows the holders to grow cannabis, harvest flower, and to package raw cannabis flower as medical cannabis. They're also allowed to sell their product to medical processors and to retailers. They're only allowed to focus on that medical side of the industry. However, they are allowed to grow up to 60,000 square feet of indoor cultivation space. Current medical producers are exempt from this limitation. So, something to note. If you are starting a new medical cultivation business, you will be allowed to cultivate up to 60,000 square feet canopy. Similar to the cultivator license, this license will also be required to note the water and electricity plan for the cultivation facility. Those who hold a medical cultivator license will also be able to hold a medical processor license, a adult use cultivator license, a manufacturer license, and an event organizer license. And other limitations may be placed upon this business aside from just that cultivation limit later on by the Office of Cannabis Management. However, these have not yet been determined and will be created during that rulemaking process. Another medical business that was created by this license type in House File 100 is the medical processor license. This license type allows businesses to buy medical cannabis flower and products, hemp, and concentrate from licensed medical businesses for the production of concentrates, medical cannabinoid products, and you're allowed to sell those to other medical processors and to medical retailers. Medical processors, to get started, is similarly only a $250 license fee. Medical processors are not allowed to process adult use cannabis, and it has to be processed in a separate part of the facility if you have a manufacturer license. They have to be kept entirely separate. Office approval is also required if you plan to use any volatile chemicals in your methods of extraction or concentrating of cannabis. So do note if you plan to use a volatile chemical such as butane, you do need to get approval during that application process from the Office of Cannabis Management. Those with a medical processor license also are allowed to have a medical cultivator license, a cultivator license, a manufacturer license, and an event organizer license. And applications for a medical processor are required to include plans for ventilation, filtration, and utilities, similar to the adult use manufacturer license. The final license type that we want to talk about today is a medical retailer license. The medical retailer license allows license holders to purchase medical cannabis flower and products from medical cultivators and processors and to sell them to authorized patients and individuals. For a $250 license fee, you are able to start up a medical retailer. Similar to the medical retailers of today, a pharmacist consultation will be required for patients to purchase into this cannabis program. So, like today, if you plan to purchase a product and are a new patient, you do need to meet with a pharmacist before you're allowed to do that. Medical patients are exempt from the purchase limits of 2 ounces, 8 grams, or 800 milligrams of edibles and concentrates, respectively. During purchase, they are capped at a 90-day supply limit, which is determined by their individual doctor. So patients are exempt and are allowed to purchase up to that 90-day supply. If you hold a medical retailer license, you are also allowed to hold a business license, a retailer license, a delivery service license, and an event organizer license. And finally, medical retailers are the only business that are allowed to do drive up business, meaning that they are allowed to sell cannabis to patients or caregivers in a mobile vehicle. We saw this arise during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the same stayed to allow patients to get pickup in their cars. We're excited to see this continue into Minnesota's new medical market under House File 100. Now let's talk about the low potency edible market that was created in July of 2022 and talk about how House File 100 deals with that industry moving forward. The license type that was created to accommodate this industry is two. The lower potency hemp edible manufacturer license is the first one we're going to explore. And this license allows holders to purchase hemp and artificially derived cannabinoids from various cannabis businesses here in the state of Minnesota to make hemp concentrates and to manufacture lower potency hemp edible products for sale and to sell them to other cannabis and hemp businesses. So you are not selling directly to consumers as a manufacturer, but instead selling to those with a retail license. Endorsements are required to allow for the extraction of cannabis concentrates and for the production of consumer goods. So, depending upon what type of business you plan to run as a manufacturer, please note that an endorsement will be required by that Office of Cannabis Management. Another thing to note is that this license type, likewise, is only business to business. You're only allowed to sell the products that you have to other businesses, not directly to consumers. Those with the lower potency hemp edible manufacturer license will also be allowed to hold a license to sell hemp edibles and will also be allowed to sell or also allowed to hold a license to cultivate industrial hemp, which again is not overseen by the Office of Cannabis Management. And like the manufacturer license type on that adult use side, the use of volatile chemicals and methods of extraction will be required to be approved by the Office of Cannabis Management. So for a $1,250 initial startup fee, you can start a lower potency hemp edible manufacturer business here in the state of Minnesota. Currently in the state of Minnesota, you're not required to get a license to sell low potency hemp edibles. Under House File 100, when the Office of Cannabis Management comes online, however, that changes. You will be required to get a lower potency hemp edible retailer license. This license allows holders to sell hemp edibles to individuals over the age of 21. They must source products from licensed entities here in the state of Minnesota and adhere to packaging and labeling requirements. Lower potency hemp edible retailers will also be allowed to for on-site consumption with the endorsement from the Office of Cannabis Management. The license fee for this business is set, unlike others, not on a per business type, but on a per location type. So it's a $250 application fee per location and a $250 license fee per location. So you're looking at an initial startup fee of $500 per location for a hemp potency hemp edible retailer. You are allowed to sell other products. For example, if you have a liquor license, you're allowed to sell alcohol, or you're just allowed to sell other products generally. Cannabis products, however, must be securely displayed inside of your store, so they must be displayed behind a counter or in a locked case, excluding beverages. And if you have a lower potency hemp edible retailer license, you're also allowed to have a license to manufacture hemp edibles and a license to cultivate industrial hemp. The last license type that we want to talk about today that was created by House File 100 is the testing facility license type. This license allows holders to obtain and test cannabis plants, flower, products, hemp material, and cannabinoids from various cannabis businesses throughout Minnesota, including both adult use and medical cannabis businesses. These labs are required to be accredited. The Office of Cannabis Management will determine an accreditation organization, but that has not yet been determined and will come later during that rulemaking process. We expect there to only be a few testing facilities throughout the state. There was a fiscal note put out by the Senate during the bill drafting process. And while that's not law, it is a recommendation, and it estimated there to only be 5 testing facilities that will be created through 2027. So we expect there to only be a few of these, and they'll be really important to the industry. Those who hold this license are not allowed to own, work for, or operate any other cannabis or hemp business type. Also, all products are required to be tested here in state. So there will absolutely be a need for these testing facilities come adult use cannabis here in Minnesota. The license fee for this is pretty high, a $5,000 application fee and a $5,000 initial license fee. So you're looking at an initial startup cost of $10,000 from that regulatory side of the industry. This concludes our presentation today about the cannabis license types here in the state of Minnesota, created by House File 100. While there's still a lot that we don't know about the application process and about the license type specifically, we do hope to learn more during the rulemaking process. You can follow along with the Minnesota Cannabis College at mncannabiscollege.org, and you can follow along with the state of Minnesota at cannabis.mn.gov. If you'd like to get a PDF version of our presentation today, you can scan that QR code or visit mncannabiscollege.org/overview to download a PDF copy of this. Our organization is mission driven but donation fueled. If you would like to help donate to support our organization, you can go to bit.ly/MNCC donate, or you can go to mncannabiscollege.org and click on the button that says donate. We are a registered 501c4 nonprofit here in the state of Minnesota, and we do really appreciate your support to help us continue operating. Please reach out if you have any other questions. We can be reached at info@mncannabiscollege.org, or as always, you can contact us through our website, mncannabiscollege.org.